Today we're going to talk about why your Azure costs are going up, why your MACC agreements are going up, and I'll try and provide some insight into how to mitigate that, some best practices from the field, as always, share some experience with you, and open up at any time actually for questions because I love this to be an interactive session. So, welcome everyone, Daryl Ullman. Together with me is my partner, Sasha Golev. I'll be doing all the talking today. I'll let Sasha rest, relax. As you
Um,
all know, these are really more of informal talks. They're not presentations. Of course, we prepare because we don't want to waste your time and try and provide you with as much information, knowledge sharing, experience that we can in the next 30 to 45 minutes, roughly, depending on how many questions you have for us or for me. So let's start. There's quite a bit to cover today, but the ultimate goal is to leave you with a bit more information, understanding about how to better negotiate or prepare or mitigate or cost optimize your MAC agreement. This is not about the technical side, the optimization side uh, on Azure. That you need to talk to, not to me, um, but one of our counterparts, one of our peers in the company, Stefan. He runs our cloud optimization business, and he's much more knowledgeable than I am. We've had a couple of, maybe more than a couple of sessions with Stefan. If you want additional hardcore technical sessions on the subject, please reach out to us, drop us a note, and we'll be happy to facilitate um, a talk on that subject.
I want to add as one note from our last live stream with Stefan, when he said, by the way, that when you have a Mac, always pay attention what sort of discount you're getting through the Mac. This is not related to negotiations; it's related to further management, because the Mac discount can be bigger than your savings plans or reserved instances discounts, and for some reason, Microsoft doesn't technically apply a bigger discount in that case. So make sure that when you want to use savings plans or reserved instances, that discount is not lower than what you get through your Mac. So sometimes Mac provides better discounts. This is a key point. That's all, and I'll ping it back to you, Daryl.
Thanks, Sasha. So I want to just start with a bit of a background to what's happening in the market, so everybody better understands why the negotiations are just that much more difficult and discounts are dropping. Let's start off with understanding Microsoft's financial position as of today. So Microsoft has, to my opinion, again, this is what I'm seeing in the market, how I personally view Microsoft's business, is that Microsoft has basically transitioned from a software vendor almost all the way to an infrastructure operator. Not fully there, but I would almost say they are uh, maybe even more of an infrastructure operator than a software vendor, to my opinion. And that's a huge transition. So if you've looked at the Microsoft FY25 results that came out in July, you'll see that Azure and other cloud services grew by 39% year over year in Q4, making it basically their strongest quarter since 2022. Azure's annual revenue surpassed $75 billion. That's huge. Okay, that's 34% year on year. Um, Azure, Microsoft 365, Dynamics, just for the quarter, reached almost 47 billion, 46.7 billion. That's a 27% year on year increase. Microsoft's Intelligent Cloud segment generated 29.9 billion for the same quarter. Again, that's a 26% from the previous year. Those are huge numbers, and they're all coming from data centers, from 400 plus. I've lost count. over 400 data centers worldwide, basically in around 70 regions. So just think about it. Microsoft, what, 7, 8 years ago, I've lost count when actually everything started to really take off. Microsoft was selling licenses, high margins, their only expense only. Well, their expense was R&D, sales, marketing, and their margins on every license sold was huge. They didn't have operating costs like electricity, hardware, refresh cycle, GPUs, CPUs, networking component that are replaced every 3 to 5 years, depending on the cycle, on the hardware maintenance cycle. They didn't have any facilities, real estate costs, buildings, maintenance, securing those data centers. Electricity, it's like powering a small city. Um, Part of the hyperscaler businesses are actually now into electricity. Those of you that are following, they're purchasing electricity facilities. They're looking how can they generate, own uh, the power supply from the source. Uh, that's that's a paradigm shift. Networking, the backbone, the connectivity, redundancy, latency management, huge expenses. And then let's not forget that the operational maintenance cost of personnel is 24 by 7, 365. Disaster recovery, compliance. So it's not the same business Microsoft had 10 years ago, taking a nice even number. Their margins are dropping. And when your margins start to drop or your operational cost increases, something needs to change in your business model. And what's changing is, first of all, discounting. And of course, we've also seen cost increases both on Microsoft 365 and, of course, on Azure. A few months back, there was a hike in prices. So um, they are still adapting. I don't say they're adapting to their new operational model, and that's based on becoming a almost an infrastructure operator on top of them being a software vendor, software entrepreneur, if you want to look at it that way. And if you're looking for reasons why Microsoft is pushing hard on discounting, concessions, and everything else, it's because of that. Because their operational cost has increased. Roughly, they are planning, at least the numbers that they've released, to spend $80 billion in this coming year or 12 plus months in AI optimized data centers, capacity expansion, related infrastructure. That's huge money. Okay, somebody has to cover that. Who's it going to be? It's going to be the customer base. Let's add on to that the competitive landscape. So Microsoft has done a amazing job in catching up to the two hyperscalers that are real competitors out there, being AWS and GCP. Still, GCP is lagging far behind. Around, again, depends who you ask, what the source is, but around 11% of the market. Uh, AWS is still number one, with around, again, depends who you ask, around 30%, 30 to 32% of the market, and then you have Microsoft with 22 to 25% of the global cloud infrastructure market. So Microsoft has made some major gains, but they still catching up, and there's still market share out there. So they're going after that next layer of market share. So it's not only growth; it's also competition. And the reason that I'm pointing out competition because it's it's something I'm going to talk about in a few minutes around negotiation strategy. So part of offsetting negotiations where you don't have growth, you need to look for alternatives in the negotiation process. Again, going back to basics that I've been saying for quite a long time, going back to the basics of having an alternative, a best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So it's not enough just to put your current revenue on the table. You need to put some kind of alternative, either growth or upside, either growth or an alternative. Otherwise, you're going to get a, how did a enterprise customer put it last week when I had a roundtable at SAM's 2025 in Amsterdam? He said, "Oh, well, we got an okay deal. This is a 200,000 user company with a 300 or 400 million Azure contract. Said, I got an okay deal." When a company of that magnitude says, I got an okay deal, you understand that the landscape has changed and that you need to do something different to not to get an okay deal. I don't accept an okay deal, even for small customers, but for a large customer of that magnitude, it has to be an excellent deal, even with Microsoft. So again, looking at everything, Microsoft needs to really increase their revenue. And what we're seeing today is that organizations that are renewing contracts, we've got, well, let's say there are two types of well, I want to say it's not really two types. Let's say one type of organization that we're mainly talking about today, it's renewals. So we've got most organizations already on Azure. So it's not a new game that, okay, now you're moving to Azure. You might be moving from a competitive product like a platform, not a product, like AWS, GCP, or maybe from smaller um, providers to Microsoft. We're not seeing too much of that, but that is one type of customer. So maybe let's just separate it. Um, and then we have renewals. And most of our customers, most of enterprise customers out there are in the renewal phase, either now or in 2 years or 3 years, depending where you are in your journey with Microsoft. And if you haven't yet experienced that renewal process, I want to just prepare you for a very challenging renewal negotiation. So Microsoft is not rewarding steady state. They're not rewarding you on what you did. They're not going to reward you because you've paid $100 million. I'm taking a nice round number. Um, they're not going to. If you bring 100 million and you've spent 100 million in the last, let's say, 3 years, um, they're not going to give you any kind of compensation. For them, you are a captive customer, and that's what the cloud models, the 365 Microsoft 365 models have really done. Microsoft views their customers as captive customers. It's not something that's easy to accept as an end customer, but if you're not going to show any growth, even if you are $100 million customer, you're not really interesting anymore. Um, Maybe that's something Microsoft, hopefully, if enough customers voice that, um, where is customer retention, where's customer satisfaction, where's rewarding us for being loyal customers for the last 20 years, and Microsoft shifts their mindset, maybe something will happen. But until that day, and I haven't seen it, Microsoft's going to go with the same go forward process. Uh, no growth, no reward. Very, very simple. So that's something that you need to prepare yourself for.
Daryl,
Yes, please, Sasha.
I actually just had a conversation these days, this week, behind closed doors, but something I'm happy to share. It's not really a secret. It was just confirmed what we kept talking all this time is the growth target for Microsoft account managers is 20% on the deal. That's the target they're chasing. It must be
That's
20%. If they're not hitting it, they're going to have a very sorry face when they talk to their managers.
So that goes back to personal compensation, something that you need to keep in the back of your head, that when you're negotiating, try and align yourself with the account manager's personal incentives. And what you've just said, Sasha, is really important, because at the end of the day, you need to understand that if they don't get 20%, he's not going to meet his targets. But on the other hand, you're not going to get any discounts. So you need to even start thinking about how do you shift the entire conversation from not from growth, but even keeping the steady state alive. And what we have been, now, it's every customer is different, but one of the strategies that we've put in place lately is a decrease lose strategy for Microsoft, where we are actually positioning. It takes preparation, so this is not just um, a threat. Okay, it can't be a threat. It needs to be something that you put into place 9, 12 months in advance. Um, all customers that we work with for years. So one of the strategy basically means you put in place ahead of time a viable alternative, where you start looking at how you decrease Microsoft's current steady state revenue. Then there's a threat on the table, a real viable threat, that not only are we going to stay flat, we're actually going to start moving business away. Microsoft's biggest threat is it's not more than um, it's there are two threats. One is growth, but the bigger threat is decreasing revenue. And Microsoft has got used to being in a position where the discussion is only about growth. How much growth are you bringing to the table? And Microsoft's account teams, actually, I don't want to say Microsoft's a lazy company. Lazy. And people that have been working there for many years are even lazier than those that have just come in. And why are they lazy? Because they don't really they haven't really worked in a real competitive environment where you are fighting for your customer, where you are got a number of competitors. There are RFPs out there, um, and you don't have that leverage of being Microsoft. So there's like a mindset. Not that they're not good people, excellent people, but there's a lazy mindset that comes into play where you don't really compete on the same level as smaller custom companies anymore for business, because it's given that the business is there. You Microsoft, you're working with an enterprise customer. They've already opted in for Azure. The alternative, if it hasn't been placed 6 to 9 months in advance at minimum, is non-viable. Threats on they don't get really excited about idle threats. So you really need to change your mindset. And if you don't change your mindset and you don't only look for growth, you look for alternatives, not only is your negotiation position for this renewal jeopardized, or weakens your position, your future Microsoft spend is just going to grow and grow and grow. And I've said to customers, don't complain anymore. Stop complaining. If you're not willing to do the hard work of building alternatives, um, have competitive RFPs out there, have multiple cloud options, don't complain that your spend is going up. This is a competitive market, very, very competitive. So either be ready just to grow your business and pay more. Maybe that is legitimate and that's fine for you. Absolutely fine. Just get into a growth mode, never ending expansion or cost increase of 20, 30%, sometimes for the same set of services, or do the hard legwork. That's the mindset. you're not going to be compensated for being a good customer anymore, or for being a steady state customer.
I, I, I'm sorry for interrupting it, but one thought doesn't leave my mind. There's a danger of overcommitting when you negotiate. When you know that Microsoft expects growth by 20%, and you may overestimate what you want to grow by, and you already may have an overinflated commitment which you're struggling to meet, and you're chasing all those little additional third-party apps on the marketplace, or taking more and more just to stay inside your commitment, because if you don't meet it, you don't get the benefits. uh, how to avoid the trap of overcommitting, and then instead of cost management, you start doing what's the word I'm looking for? Commitment management, which sometimes may defeat the purpose of this entire procurement operation.
So you're in the advanced class, Sasha, of my talk. You've jumped 2 steps forward, but let me answer that. Thank you. No, I appreciate the question. Keeps things interesting. Um, Let me address overcommitting by discussing how you prepare for a renewal. And the first step in preparing for a renewal is understanding what your future spend is going to be. And this is a big undertaking. So it's about understanding your historical spend. Hopefully you've got a enough information and data. A lot of a large number of organizations already have historical data. So you can look at what your growth trend has been. Now, I can take a wild guess that 99% of the people on this call are in organizations where they have underestimated in their first commitment their overall spend. So they underestimated, and budgets are like through the roof. And they continuously grew the commitment over the first period, at least the first period of the contract. Could have been 3-5 years ago, it could be now, depending where you are in your journey. Um, but that shouldn't happen today. You should be able to look at your previous commitments, your spend, and then predict what your future commitment is going to look like. Again, everything depends on where you are in your journey, and there are various stages in the journey. There's that basic lift and shift that you went through, and then there is the larger commitments of maybe your SAP um, uh, move to Microsoft, or other data your R&D and your backup, and the larger pieces of your operational side of the business. So depending where that is, but you need to take that into account. You need to do the hard crunch of the numbers. You need to look at what your competitive lands, not competitive, what are your alternatives, where you are, what you can move or cannot move from other cloud vendors to Microsoft. Take all that into account. And then add on to that, and this is where we see a lot of opportunity there and a lot of misses, is what is your optimization potential? What can you optimize? And I still think that organizations are under optimized by 30 to 50%. We see it. We see it when we start optimizing environments. FinOps is not optimization. So if somebody throws out that we've got a really good FinOps team, it doesn't mean much from an optimization perspective. Optimization is a whole different subject, whole different KPIs, scorecards. Everything changes. The mindset changes when it comes to optimization, and you need stakeholders that actually care about optimization. Because what happens is that if you've overcommitted, then you're not going to optimize anything. You're just going to look how to spend more, spend more, spend more. Crazy business model where you're just looking how to spend more money because you're overcommitted. So look at, basically, the way that I always recommend is have 3 commercial tiers. Um, Basically, your low watermark, your actual watermark where you want to meet your growth um, um, plans, and then like your highest watermark, like watermark plus 30%, 40%, really overreaching, and then build that into stages of negotiation. So you have like your tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 commitments. Start off with your lowest commitment with Microsoft, and then also model in what is that going to mean if you overcommit. Where can you have you got some kind of fallback position with Microsoft? Do you have a fourth year where you can potentially, again, like a fourth year of if you have a 3-year contract and then you have a fourth year um, 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 option to prepay and then consume what you have and what your under commitment. But you need to be really careful with those overcommits, because when you overcommit, you're basically throwing away good money. So it's about tiering, it's about planning, and that's where most of the work should go as part of your preparation. Do that. Do that really well. Tier your negotiation targets or your negotiation commitments. Start low and then build it up. That's only part of that negotiation strategy. Again, we're not getting into the technical side of it today. Pure negotiations. Prepare an alternative. Your alternative could be rollback. That's also happening. Again, each organization has their unique position. It could be that you got to roll back to on-prem, possible. It could be that you're looking to roll back from Microsoft. Maybe you want to roll back your again, I'm going back to SAP because that's what's stuck in my head now. Your SAP implementation to SAP. You want to go in another direction, or you might have um, another cloud in place, and you've got a really big workload that you're looking on, or let's say workload, you're looking on migrating. It was going to go to Microsoft, but maybe you want to stop a second and run a old school RFP on that. Or maybe not even a hyperscaler. Maybe you want to look at a fifth party data center provider that is a niche player that can provide you better pricing, better service, and I don't know, flexible terms and conditions. Because don't forget, when you negotiate with non-hyperscalers, you've got so much more flexibility. Um, Another element that you can bring into play for your negotiation strategy is everything to do with localization, geography specific. With everything going on with the US, Europe, let's call it trade discussions, not trade wars, but let's say trade discussions. There's a huge emphasis. Everybody's um, aware of this. Huge emphasis on staying local and what it means staying local. Microsoft is also investing a lot in local data centers. Uh, but then what does that mean? Maybe you can use that as leverage. Maybe you can use regulatory um, um, requirements as part of that negotiation leverage. So you need to be smart about how you look at and how you prepare. Of course, there's a whole element of what type of instances and how you want to reserve and what you're going to reserve, and optimization has to be done. That whole optimization piece that I like went through, like I just said, yes, there's a whole element you need to optimize part of your future review. You need to take into consideration how much you can really optimize, take that into account, and then have a plan actually how you're going to optimize. I always say you better have an under commitment than an over commitment. So underperform than overperform. This is so much money on the table. You don't want to just throw it away because you've committed. And then you're looking for ways to. We've had conversations with organizations that are coming to us. How can we spend more? How can we spend millions of dollars to meet our commitment? Give us ideas. Okay, we're an optimization company. We reduce spend. So we've been challenged in ways that I never thought I would be challenged. Of how do I spend more money to meet my commitments, to get rebates and all kinds of other stuff, but at the same time spend that money in places where I actually need a service, not just throw it away, but actually utilize it. So there are times where we're looking at early renewals, early commitments, moving workloads in different areas, um, or another area that I know everybody's. It's a big topic. This it's actually coming up more than it did before. It's everything to do with marketplace spend. So the whole um, marketplace is huge spend. So again, you need to just make sure that part of your negotiation when you're looking at your commitment, I didn't talk about this, but again, can't talk about everything in 45 minutes, is what is your marketplace spend? How much of that spend can come into your commitment? And then what contract you can start moving that you have direct with suppliers, you can move to the marketplace. So that's also a huge benefit. Again, you need to look at the terms and conditions and what it means. There are, of course, nothing's trivial. We're still coming we're still seeing a lot of unmonitored spend, huge numbers actually, of unmonitored spend in marketplace, where people that shouldn't be spending money or buying are buying. There's a funny story where a CIO of a large organization told me that I've I can sign off without going through any kind of committees, anything around 50,000 euros. My personal sign off, take a decision, I buy this, I do this, take a consultant. But anything above that, I need to go through a full process within the organization. Fair enough. But then he pointed out that his data engineers, or his engineers in general, can spend millions with no accountability, with no traceability, accountability, traceability, manageability, all these abilities. And he says, I'm lost. I've got no control. I can't spend more than 50K without going through a process. They can do whatever they want. Now, when you stop to think about it, it's crazy. It's like an open check or an open credit card for people that have got no accountability. They have no understanding of business. Where the millions going? So all that. Now, I've shifted a bit the talk, but if I take it back to predictability, planning, there's a huge amount of optimization that needs to go into your planning, and that needs to be actually realized afterwards. So it's not pure negotiations, it's pure business um, practicability or common sense, almost, I would say, that it's been lost a bit through this huge move to the cloud, to Azure, it's the same for AWS or GCP. Whatever I'm saying now is it's the same for all the large hyperscalers. So you need to take all this into consideration. It's quite an undertaking. You need to recognize what the account team's scorecard looks like, just as Sasha pointed out, that 20% growth need requirement. And once you have that in place, then you get into positioning yourself and finding where you want to be positioned when you enter into the negotiation. And there are various there are, negotiable terms that you need to look at. So I mentioned the fourth year of the agreement, so like rollover of unused spend that can apply to future periods. Um, is there actually an option for like true up, true down? Interesting conversation. There are various ways to opt in for alignment during the term of the agreement. You have the right terms and conditions there. Um, price protection, again, you need to understand, and there was a big surprise when everyone's Azure cost went up because there were a lot of people out there that thought that their price was fixed. Their discount was fixed. Their price wasn't fixed. You want to discuss that as a large organization. And of course, everything to do with additional incentives. So Microsoft, again, you need to bring the right workload or the right alternative. There's specific funding. So it's not only about discounts. When you do your planning, think about, okay, if I don't get a discount, but I meet a threshold, a certain threshold of spend over a certain period of time, I'm going to get back either credits from Microsoft, or maybe I'm going to get specific funding for projects. So there are different buckets that Microsoft has at their disposal that is equivalent to um, hard dollars, hard euros, and you need to just tie that in. So of course, Microsoft will try tie it into growth, logical. You need to just make sure that if it's tied into growth, then what's that period? What's the rollback? And what are the options around there if you don't meet that? Uh, Again, that sometimes pushes organizations to overcommit just to get that rebate. Maybe it's going to get to that threshold and it's not worthwhile making that additional spend. Um, Something that comes to mind that not long ago, I saw an organization that actually was so entrenched and there were changes in the organization that they actually forgot almost, well, not almost, they forgot to meet that specific time, that threshold. And when they reached the threshold to get that rebate, they were missing a few 100,000 euros and they went slightly over the date. So they missed that date by a few 100,000 euros and they missed the rebate. That comes back to what I'm going to talk about in a minute as the last topic, and that is internal governance. So how do you make sure that the contract, once it's signed, it's not put into a drawer, that there's somebody there, or if people change, that you've got a good system in place that's going to flag all those additional concessions and those thresholds that you need to meet and when you need to meet them. And there are certain thresholds that you need to plan for um, through higher commitment. So again, it might not be something that you can meet within a month. So you need to just monitor it. Again, that's good practice. That's FinOps. That's good FinOps practice. Good management. That's not, again, and I'm separating this conversation because I think it's time that we start calling calling it what it is. FinOps is FinOps. It's management. It's not optimization. And I'm really I'll say that I'm hyped about this. The reason being is that there's so much opportunity out there, and there's so much confusion between the people that are managing FinOps that don't want to lose the budget, they don't want to lose the flexibility, got different um, incentives internally. So if you ask an engineer to start optimizing, why the hell should they optimize? Or certain people that are budget holders, who wants to optimize and reduce the budget? Everybody wants to have more budget, ego. And then even if you optimize, sorry, part of the risk of optimizing is that somebody in the organization might come to you and say, well, why are you optimizing now? What went wrong? Did you do something wrong? Did you overspend in millions of your? Where were you when this happened? So there are gatekeepers, sorry, out there that don't really want to optimize because they will look bad. So the same people that are holding on to FinOps are not ultimately the same people that need to optimize and have the same responsibilities. So I think this is almost a separate expertise or line of business or responsibility line within organizations. So again, strong message, even though it's not part of it's part of the negotiation because you need to prepare. And if you're talking to the wrong people, you're only going to have growth, growth, growth. You're going to have no optimization, or you're going to have really basic optimization around reservations. Reservations is just one small piece that most organizations, well, not everybody's doing reservations properly, but still, that's the low hanging fruit. There's so much more to do around that. So when we are looking um, at the final stages of preparing for the negotiation, don't forget about benchmarking. Part of your preparation, not only the side of what we've just discussed about the actual operational commitment side, alternatives, competitive options, RFPs, super important. Don't forget that. It's getting the basics right as well. And one of the basics is understanding what's happening in the marketplace. Go out there, talk to your peers, get benchmarking information. Really, really important. But it's not just pure benchmarking. Needs to be relevant. Needs to be relevant to your geography. Needs to be relevant to your segment, to growth, and needs to be relevant to, of course, the size of commitment. So don't forget about that. Um, get your get the basics right. Get the finance aligned. Get your legal advice, your legal aligned, IT, of course, or FinOps. Just align your entire group. This is not something you can do alone. It's just so complex, and you need a long runway. Again, going back to some of the basics that I've been asked about, can I leverage my MACC agreement to get better discounts in my EA? I always say try. Absolutely try. Um, we're talking to a customer, advising a customer now that they are looking how they can add an additional commitment in Azure in order to receive higher discounts on their Microsoft 365 package. Now, you can argue Microsoft allowed to have these conversations, competition, monopoly position. Nothing's official, nothing's written. But let's not be naive, okay? And I'm not a naive person. Don't be naive as well. These conversations go on all the time. Buy more here, get a discount here. Commit me. It really depends on where your account team is. They might be lacking growth in Azure. There's a 5-year agreement in there, and they might be missing from another customer. That usually account manager manages a number of customers, again depending on the size, and they're missing something here. So they'll come to you and they'll start talking about a bit more commitment in Azure for your Microsoft 365 discount. So always be aware of the nuances. These are things that Microsoft won't write down. Okay, they're not allowed to negotiate and link um, because of their position in the market. And there's no doubt they are a monopoly when it comes to desktop um, and operating systems and a few other products. Okay? Not me saying, common knowledge, it's out there. But it is what it is. Monopoly is not always a bad thing. It's just a position in the market based on market share. They're not a monopoly in 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 Azure. Absolutely not. But again, they've got a very strong position within an organization. They would be stupid if they're not utilizing their overall um, leverage and the overall product spread throughout the organization. So be aware of that. See if you can utilize or maximize or leverage, whatever you want to use, um, as part of that negotiation. Pretty crucial um, as well. Again, some of the basics that you need to look out for, everything around fiscal timing, um, how you want to play the game of executive escalation. When you want to bring in your executive team, senior management, just be sure that you're not going to be circumvented as part of the negotiation plan. Keep your basics. Don't forget the basics. Do the hard work. Roll up your sleeves and do the hard work. Um, you need to still challenge the inflated baselines. Again, come in with data. Use data. Do the comparisons. Show Microsoft your growth over the last 3 to 5 years, your overall growth, your overall spend. Azure, Microsoft 365, Copilot, everything that you have, you're unified. Show them how you've grown. Don't only talk about growth, talk about um, maximization and utilization of current investments. Push Microsoft to help you realize what you've invested in and what you're still implementing. Change the direction of the discussion from growth to either alternatives, decrease in revenue, or help us realize what we've already invested. So we see the return on investment. This is a conversation Microsoft's not going to feel very comfortable with. They don't even know how to address a conversation like that. I don't think they got the training. It's not in the training modules. How do you realize value from what a customer has already invested in? So push them, challenge them. It's not only about them putting you in a place where you're feeling uncomfortable. Make them feel uncomfortable as well. There's no other way to do it. This is hardball um, negotiations. So again, just to summarize, um, once you got a good deal, a really good deal, okay, don't accept an okay deal. Don't. Um, Microsoft is not the only supplier there for cloud. They're not a monopoly in Azure. There are bigger hyperscalers. There are niche players in the cloud, in infrastructure and operations. Um, so play the game, be assertive, and then afterwards keep on monitoring. And please, please, please optimize. Save yourself on average 30%. It's there. You just need to reach out and do it. Do the hard work. I'm done. I went over time. Thank you. Stopping.
Yeah,
Sasha, yours.
it's so
Over to
good.
you.
Thank you, Daryl. Um, I didn't want to dilute your last CTA because, by all means, optimize, 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 optimize. Too much money is being spent. Resources running at 40% capacity, which could be optimized. We see it all the time. We have a graph in our tool that shows how much companies are spending in a in an inefficient way, and it's staggering when we first assess the Azure deployments. I wanted to add something again on the note when you said that Microsoft is not trained to even have the conversation about optimization. It's not like they don't have the teams that do that, but it's not the team that you're talking to. They do have maybe a few experts that can reduce the costs, but the disjointment and the political the way Microsoft operates, as you know, AWS optimizes their customer estates as a policy of the company. They pay partners to optimize their spend on AWS. Microsoft doesn't do that, not even
So
close.
not only don't they do that, Sasha,
Hmm.
I recently had a conversation, last week, I had a conversation where it was brought to my attention that the entire team that built up the Microsoft Azure framework um, optimization strategy that
Hmm.
was released, I think, a year ago or a year and a half ago, they were all released. They were all let go. So because they weren't contributing to the bottom line of the company, they were building tools to optimize. When Microsoft went through this whole layoff process,
Yeah,
they were the first to go.
yeah.
So you want to talk about them not optimizing? They fired the people that built up the framework to optimize. Okay.
It's the
And I know one of
culture.
the people because they've gone to work for another company to develop their tools because he was
Mm.
let go from Microsoft. So this is like get your mind around it and don't be fooled. Microsoft's not out there to optimize your environment
No,
to reduce costs. Okay,
no.
that's not the game they're playing. So look beyond their smiles and understand that they are 100% revenue focused, 110% revenue focused.
As our cloud head Stefan says, look at the Microsoft growth, 30% year on year, sometimes quarter on quarter. It's done via your charitable donations.
I that's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it.
A lot of charity being put out there for Microsoft.
Thank you, Daryl. Very, 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 very good talk. I kept quiet because I just kept listening to all the wisdom, and I hope our viewers that are watching us live today, you missed your chance to ask questions live, but you can always send them to us privately, because we realize that many of the questions can be very sensitive, and you probably don't want to expose yourselves in policies, corporate. We understand that. And please let us know. Please let us know your suggestions, what you want to hear more in our regular events, which are now 2 a month. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on YouTube. You can even subscribe to our shorts on TikTok if you want to. We don't dance. We bring wisdom to those who spend a lot of money on Microsoft. Thanks again. Again, Daryl, thanks to you. And everybody have a great productive rest of the week.
Thank you, everyone.